Have you ever wondered why some men walk into a room and immediately earn respect without saying a single word? It's not luck. It's not because they've memorized every fact or always have the sharpest answer. Their secret? They know what not to say. Sometimes, silence reveals more intelligence than any clever comeback. And here's the truth. I've spent years studying people, from ancient Stoic philosophy to late nights watching human nature over too many cups of coffee. And I've realized the wisest men share a quiet discipline. They never waste words, never rush to fill a silence, and they especially never say things that quietly destroy their own credibility. Today, I want to share with you 7 things intelligent men never say. These aren't rules to sound flawless. They're lessons learned, often painfully, about which phrases weaken us and which strengthen us. By the end, you'll see why avoiding these words is one of the simplest ways to gain respect. Let's start. The first one, I already know that. It sounds harmless, even confident. But here's the hidden danger. The moment you convince yourself you already know something, you've slammed the door on growth. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I cut off a man mid-explanation with, "Yeah, I know that already." His silence in that moment said more than any lecture. Later, I realized what I'd done, robbed myself of a chance to see through the eyes of someone wiser, someone who had lived battles I hadn't yet fought. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that you cannot learn if you already believe you know everything. Knowledge isn't a trophy you place on a shelf. It's a river, always moving. The moment you stop wading into it, you stop growing. I once watched an old carpenter nod patiently while a young apprentice explained a technique he had mastered decades before. When I asked why he listened instead of saying, "I know," he smiled. Because sometimes you learn more by seeing it through their eyes. That is humility, and that's intelligence. The second phrase? That's impossible. I once worked with a man who seemed sharp and responsible until he kept repeating those words. Every new idea, every bold plan, his reflex response was, "That's impossible." At first it sounded cautious. Later I realized it wasn't the world he was describing. It was his own limits. Fear dressed up as logic. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That's exactly what impossible is. Fear pretending to be wisdom. Years later, I faced a project with too little budget, too little time, and too small a team. Everything in me wanted to say, "This can't be done." But instead I asked, "What step can I take today?" That project became one of the most successful of my career, not because we worked miracles, but because we refused to let fear stop us from taking the next small step. Stoic wisdom teaches, you don't need to control everything, only your own mind. Intelligent men know most impossible things are only unfamiliar. The third, that's not my fault. On the surface, it feels fair. When things fall apart, why take blame if it wasn't your doing? But here's the trap. Every time you push away responsibility, you also push away your own power to change anything. I saw this in a friend who lost a major client. He explained all the reasons it wasn't his fault, the market, the client, his team. And while he defended himself, he missed the only chance he had, to learn, to adapt, to grow. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to us, but how we respond that matters. Intelligent men know that responsibility isn't about blame. It's about influence. The moment you say it's not my fault, you hand control to someone else. But when you accept even a small part of the responsibility, you instantly take back power. Blame is easy. Responsibility is hard. But responsibility is where strength lives. The fourth phrase? I don't need help. It sounds noble, right? Strong, independent. But often it isn't strength at all. It's pride disguised as toughness. And pride isolates. It wears you down quietly while convincing you that carrying every burden alone makes you admirable. In truth, it makes you weaker. Think of Abraham Lincoln. History remembers him as a solitary figure during the Civil War. But what's often forgotten is how deeply he relied on others. His team of rivals cabinet challenged him constantly, and he welcomed it. not because he lacked strength, but because he knew wisdom grows when we admit we don't have all the answers. Marcus Aurelius himself credited his teachers and mentors for shaping his thinking. If the most powerful emperor alive could admit he needed guidance, why can't we? I learned this lesson myself. For years I thought strength meant silence, carrying everything without leaning on anyone. All it did was wear me down. When I finally admitted, I can't do this alone, what I found wasn't judgment, it was support. True strength isn't in carrying every burden yourself. It's in knowing when to take a hand that's offered. The fifth phrase? I'm too old for that. Few lies are as quietly destructive as this one. It's resignation dressed as humor or practicality. And yet, the moment a man believes it, he begins closing doors long before life does. I once read about Harry Bernstein, who published his first book at 96 years old. Not only was it published, it became internationally acclaimed. He went on to write 3 more books after that. Imagine if he'd said, I'm too old. The Stoics reminded us, age is irrelevant to the soul. What matters is whether you remain curious, willing, and alive to possibility. I've seen men in their 60s start new businesses, pick up new trades, men to the young, and others the same age quietly retreat, believing their story was already over. The difference is mindset. Intelligent men refuse to let age become an excuse. They ask, what can I do now? The sixth phrase? I'll do it later. It might be the most seductive lie of all. We tell ourselves we'll apologize later, we'll start that project later, we'll call tomorrow. But later is a graveyard, the place where most good intentions go to die. I knew a man named Thomas who kept postponing time with his father, always busy, always convinced there would be later. One day, later was gone. His father passed suddenly, and Thomas was left with words unsaid and plans unkept. The Stoics urged us to remember death not as something dark, but as a reminder of urgency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say. Wise men know that waiting for the perfect time is a trap. The perfect time never comes. Act now. Later is an illusion. The seventh and final phrase? That's just how I am. It sounds final, like a full stop, but really it's an excuse, a way of avoiding growth. I've seen men say it after losing their temper, or refusing vulnerability, or clinging to bad habits. But the Stoics believed self-mastery was our highest calling. We are not prisoners of our nature. We are shaped by what we repeatedly do. Saying that's just who I am is not truth. It's surrender. Intelligent men choose the harder path, to change, to grow, to keep asking, am I living this way because it's who I truly am, or because it's easier than doing the work to change? Life itself is change. Nature is change. And when you embrace that, you stay unfinished. And that's a good thing. So if you've ever caught yourself saying one of these phrases, you're not alone. I've said them too. The difference is in recognizing them and choosing better. Because wise men aren't those who never stumble. They're the ones who notice, learn, and move forward. Which one spoke to you the most today? Maybe it's time to drop, that's just how I am. Or stop saying, I'll do it later, before later becomes never. Whatever it is, this is your invitation to take the next step. Wisdom isn't about perfection. It's about humility, curiosity, and constant growth. If this sparks something in you, share it with someone walking the same path. And if you haven't already, subscribed, because together we're building something timeless. Strength through wisdom.